In this session, we're going to be exploring together an aspect of Christian animism that really is exciting and brings so many things together. Our theme is everything is person. When I go through my 6 Christian animist principles, that everything is alive, everything is sacred, everything is connected, everything is person, everything is nurtured, everything is respected, people usually give a really positive response. No, that's just fantastic. And then sometimes there's a moment's pause, and then there's, but just one thing troubles me. Everything is person. I don't know whether I can really get my head around that. All the rest is great, but everything is person's a problem. What we need to remember is that each expression, every expression of animism around the planet recognizes in one way or another that everything is person. Not only that, that in most cases, that understanding is almost like the starting point. It's absolutely central. And yet, when we look to share these ideas in our Western culture and take them on board ourselves, so often such an idea is considered utterly absurd. So that's one of the big challenges that we're working through in this session together. What I hope you'll see as this session unfolds is the idea that everything is person, the idea of personhood flows from the themes that we've already been looking at. So personhood flows very naturally from an understanding that everything is alive. Life and personhood together involve the idea of agency, that there is an ability to exert influence in the way in which matter expresses itself, even right down at the particle level, and a sense of awareness, of sentience, of perception, in ways we really can't fully understand, but increasingly that seems to be the case from a scientific point of view. Of course, tribal and indigenous people have recognized this for thousands of years. Personhood finds itself expressed in infinitely diverse ways. And then personhood shines through our understanding that everything is sacred. That flow of the experience of meaning and relationship. As we connect with all things and different things, we discover that there is character, there is quality, there is meaning revealed in every relationship we find ourselves in. I love the words from the New Testament which talk about the fruit of light is found in all that is good and right and true. And that quality flows through everything, and it becomes revealed, and we encounter it through the relationships with the personhood of reality that we encounter. Personhood also emerges from our understanding that everything is connected. Some of you will remember how Nelson Mandela, Desmond Tutu would often refer to a Southern African concept, Ubuntu. It's a Zulu word, but it's found in different other words, but the concept is there right across sub-Saharan Africa. Ubuntu is a recognition that I am because you or we are. Everything is connected, and the nature of my personhood is powerfully and inescapably shaped by all other relationships that I have. So personhood and connectedness are completely and utterly inseparable. Personhood finds its essence in the possibility and the potential for reciprocal relationship. So let me put it this way, and this will be quite important as our time together unfolds. I can say, I know in principle that everything is person, but I don't yet know everyone as person. What that's reminding us is this, that personhood is not a category, certainly in indigenous cultural thinking. Personhood is not a category. Personhood is about relationship. We discover, we develop, we grow in personhood through reciprocal relationships, right across from other human beings to other what we would call animate beings, to what a phrase I really dislike, inanimate beings. Personhood is there to be found, to be discovered, and there is the potential of reciprocal relationship with all things. Let's begin by listening to some indigenous voices around the understanding that everything is person. In Western culture, this became something we were very clearly aware of, particularly in the realm of and the world of anthropology. In the 1960s, through the work of a man called Irving Hallowell. He worked with the Ojibwe people, indigenous South Central Canadian indigenous tribes. Hallowell said that observed that the Ojibwe idea of personhood reaches far beyond the notion that humans are the benchmark by which personhood is to be measured. Instead, as humans, we must take our place under a much broader concept of personhood and person, along with many other than human expressions of personhood. Let me illustrate it this way. In Western culture, and this is what Hallowell is referring to, human beings are seen as the supreme standard by which all personhood must be measured within the hierarchy of creation. Christians will say, we are made in the image and likeness of God. We are unique. And everything else is subservient and less than that. I want to show you that actually, from a biblical point of view, that is open to real question. And because a biblical perspective is an indigenous perspective, what we see right across the indigenous peoples of the planet, that personhood is an overarching concept, higher than any one sort of individual, within which humans must simply find their place amid the whole community of creation. Our experience, our expression, our being as persons is one amongst many, each unique, each bringing special dimensions to that understanding. Let's move to India and just reflect for a few moments on the Nayaka people The Nayaka are indigenous South Indians from the Nilgiri Hills. And we know about them through the work of an Israeli anthropologist, Nurit Bird David. She learned that among the Nayaka, a person is understood as one with whom we share a sense of kinship at the heart of relationship. Now, we've spoken previously that everything is connected. We've talked about kinship. The Nayaka say that the idea of personhood emerges and is expressed in being one with those that we share this unique kinship with at the heart of relationships. Again, when we talked about everything is connected, I referred briefly to the Nayaka and their description, their phrase, Namasanta, we the people. Now, Namasanta didn't just mean the other human beings in the group. It's actually an inclusive term that embraces all relationships within their community. And their community is made up not only of the other humans in the community, but the surrounding environment. We, the people. We, this kinship group that we recognize that we are one with. The Nayaka talk about and understand making relationship. Relationship isn't something that just comes almost like flicking a switch. Relationship is built, it's developed, it grows, it's dynamic. And of course, we all know that's true in our own life and relationships. And again, not just with the others in their local group, in terms of humans, but with the whole environment around them. Now, on one hand, the Nayaka have different words for, say, the hill that overshadows their community, or an elephant in the forest, or another person, another human. But all these different names are nested together in this concept of being within and one with and in relationship with one another. They're absorbed into this we-ness, this wholeness of personhood that they call Namasanta, we the people. Those persons who are part of this we-ness are referred to as Devaru. Now, just to make a point here, there are elephants in the forest around them who they recognize, for instance, as being Devaru, part of this kinship of community. There are other elephants who they recognize that they would see as person, but they don't have this kinship relationship, although that could become a possibility. So the Devaru are not spirits. They're not supernatural beings, but they've been described as super persons in the sense of persons with extra power. And so personhood amongst the Nayaka, the Devaru are seen as kind of super relatives who the Nayaka need and who help the Nyaka, and also whom the hill, the elephant, the wild boar, the trees also need and are helped in extraordinary ways. The Devaru for the Nyaka embody those shared relationships with other beings, all of whom are recognized as persons and have a unique expression of personhood in that kinship group that they have. For example, a hill, an overshadowing mountain, Devaru, would embody their relationship with the hill. So the hill is Devaru, and that says this is the essence of the hill. And through that relationship, they get to know the hill, and the bond is increased. And they have festivals and celebrations where they honor the Devaru, they learn from the Devaru, children begin to understand the nature of personhood in that community as a result of those celebrations. Very exciting. Now let's move on to biblical voices. Everything is person. An absolutely key word in a biblical understanding of personhood is the word nephesh. At its core, it has a sense of personhood that is physically embodied in one way or another. It's often very closely linked to the idea of the breath of life. And it's used to describe humans and animals and birds and fish. And I think it's in Amos, even God is referred to in one place as nephesh. However, it's interesting when you turn to the Kabbalah, the Jewish mystics, they will recognize that, in fact, everything is nephesh, everything is person. And when you read the biblical text, you see that understanding is there as well. Now, I want to pause for a moment and talk about quite a contentious term. And that is the phrase Mother Earth. When you talk to many Christians, they will be quite adamant and say, you know, the whole concept of Mother Earth, that's not a biblical concept. We have nothing to do with that. Other religions have that. Other spiritualities have that, but we don't. I want to fundamentally challenge that response. I will agree. The phrase Mother Earth does not occur in the biblical text. However, the concept is writ large, and it is profound and deeply, deeply moving. When you read the biblical text, you will see that Earth herself is the foundational person. She is the womb from which everything has been born, and as mother provides for us and for the whole of creation. Some years ago, I coined a phrase to try and begin to capture what is going on in the biblical text. And I distilled it in this way: Earth is our mother together with God, who is mother. Earth is our mother together with God, who is mother. This is a huge topic, and I can only point you towards things I haven't got time to unpack it in this session, though perhaps we'll do another session where I'll give, the whole session to this, because I can speak for an hour on this topic without any difficulty at all. What I want to draw to your attention and provoke you to think about are Earth as Mother, Mother Earth, with three dimensions flowing into each other here. First, we have, as we've just been saying, Earth as Mother, the one who brings into being. We have in Genesis 1, that first creation story, on two occasions, we're told, let her bring forth. And that's a classic biblical term for giving birth to. We also find within that first creation story, God, and I want to talk about the divine feminine, closely interacting and flowing with this bringing forth of creation. And elsewhere in the Hebrew scriptures in particular, occasions when God is spoken of very clearly as the divine feminine, the one who gives birth, the one who nurtures. She is our mother, along with Earth. But I want to bring in to what I'm saying what may seem a bit of a wild card, and I really wish I had more time to unpack this, but I can only point you towards it. In Genesis 3:20, we have the man, the Adam figure, speaking of the woman, naming her Eve because she is the mother of all living. That's not just saying in the story, this tradition, she is the first of all other humans. Not simply that she is the first and all animate creatures, but we know that everything is alive. And so in fact, the mother of all. There's a huge mystery going on here, and I could unpack it in detail for you if I had the time. But what I want to say is that biblically within womanhood, there is this profound, primal, direct connection between Earth as mother, God as mother, and woman as mother. There's a huge mystery here, but it is just utterly mind-blowing when you begin to look at the detail and the kind of observations that are made in different texts that I could point you towards. Woman is mother of all living. Earth is our mother. The divine is our mother. I love the phrase, face of the earth. It brings the personhood of Earth alive and real in a profound way. I know people say, well, it's just a way of talking about the surface of the earth. No, face of the earth is affirming the personhood and expression of Earth as being, as person. Biblically and in many indigenous cultures, the face is the noblest part of a person. And the face is the essence of their presence. To see the divine face is to be in the most intimate presence of the divine, of God. I want to go on from that and to emphasize the way in which earth is person, where we see God making covenant. The Hebrew word is berith, with earth. And you can only make berith, you can only make covenant with another person. And I want you to really just identify with that word covenant, berith, and notice how often it comes up in relationship to others as well as earth. It's the key biblical word. Berith requires two people to make a covenant, just two texts. I set my bow in the clouds, and it shall be a sign of the berith between me and earth. She's person. In Deuteronomy, we have the idea of a kind of a court case. And the divine is calling the sky and the earth to witness against the people. And so here, the sky and the earth are seen as witnesses, are seen as persons. And in other contexts, everything is understood as person. Let's go back to the second creation story, where we are called into companionship with wild nature. God has said, it is not good that humans should be alone. So I will make a suitable companion for their help. And out of the ground, God formed every wild animal and every bird of the air and brought them to the human. Now, I know the story goes on and leads to the presence of woman, the presence of Eve. But that doesn't take away from the fact that the whole of creation is brought in, is one of the things there is brought in to be companions for us and us to be companions with them. That is a profound biblical statement. Companionship. Let's focus in on one word in that statement, the word with. Now, over the years, I've come to the conclusion that that little word with is the single most significant ecological word in biblical scripture. I want to create a mindset when you see the word with. It's about relationship, and it's profound in what scripture has to say in terms of our relationship with creation. Now, the totality of animism can be distilled into the single word relationship. And the totality of our key word shalom can be distilled into the single word relationship, relationship with. I'm going to give you just two examples, two favorite texts of mine, but it's everywhere. One from Job 5. You shall not fear the wild animals of the earth, for you shall be in covenant with, notice that word, the stones of the wilderness. Notice how alive, how personed stones are in the biblical stories. You shall be in covenant with the stones of the wilderness, and the wild animals shall be in shalom with you. Notice the flow between covenant and shalom, with. The wild animals shall be in shalom with you. And then we have in Hosea very important words. I will make for you a covenant on that day with the wild animals, the birds of the air, and the creeping things of the ground. And that word with comes up time and time again. We have it, Noah is in the ark with wild animals. Daniel is in the den with the lions. Whatever you make of those stories, that's not the issue. Then it's not about proximity. I'm just somewhere close to where there are. It's about relationship. And of course, we have the classic one of Jesus in the wilderness with the wild animals. And the way in which Mark's gospel in particular uses that word with emphasizes he was in relationship with the wild animals. Just in passing, another fascinating little biblical image, both in Ezekiel and the book of Revelation, we're told about 4 living creatures who are standing closest to the throne of God, each with 4 faces: the face of a lion, the face of an eagle, the face of an ox, and the face of a human. Whatever we make of these living creatures and their multiple-faced, multiple-faceted being and presence, what they're doing is exempling the shared, harmonious, complementary personhood, which together they bring something unique, each, however, equal in their standing in the presence of God. Again, lots more to think about that when we've got time, another time perhaps. Job 12, really, really important. Ask the animals and they will teach you. Birds of the air and they will tell you. Ask the earth and she will teach you, and the fish of the sea will declare to you. Everything is person. They're not just persons, but they have wisdom to bring. There's so much for us to learn if only we will hear. So building the relationship that embraces and acknowledges personhood is absolutely key for us in growing and learning and maturing as spiritual people and playing our role as we should on the planet as she unfolds. Just to focus briefly on Jesus, Jesus speaks about rocks being able to cry out. I love Jesus, but his cousin John the Baptist, when the Pharisees were sort of bad-mouthing him, saying, oh, yeah, but we're children of Abraham. And he says, these very rocks can rise up as children of Abraham, if that's necessary. The wind does what Jesus wills and commands. Mountains are shown as having the possibility of being able to move. Take note of flowers, they have wisdom. Take notice of the birds, for they have wisdom. Learn from the weather. Notice how widely weather phenomenon and personhood are woven together in the biblical text. And Jesus commands the winds and the waves, and they obey him. And so much more that we could put there. Let's conclude by just hearing a couple of contemporary voices. Consciousness, which is at the heart of personhood, is a huge problem to modern science. Fascinatingly, one of the ways in which some scientists are looking to resolve the problem is around what we call panpsychism. a fundamental and ubiquitous feature of physical reality that believes that the fundamental constituents of the world, right down to the particles, are conscious in some way. That the whole of creation has consciousness and therefore personhood woven into it. We're all familiar with the term biophilia. It was coined by Edward Wilson, who's a biologist who died recently. And he argued that within the natural world, there was an innate and genetically determined affinity within human beings and within the rest of nature. Now, this emphasizes connectedness, but it also emphasizes the fact that there's the possibility of relationship. And that relationship, astonishingly, magically, mysteriously, meaningfully, has a huge impact on us as humans, and we really in return. You're also familiar with the idea, I suppose, that flows out of that. Shinrin-yoku, forest bathing. Immerse yourself in the forest. Immerse yourself in wild nature. And remarkable things happen. Just as they do when life-giving relationships show themselves in our experience. Everything is person. Let me conclude with words from Mari Jostat, the theologian and Hebrew scholar whose work has profoundly moved us towards being able to see clearly and unquestionably personhood within nature, within the biblical text. She says, in animistic worldviews, personhood includes the sun, rocks, and the wind, all of which participate in social relationships with other persons. To say that biblical writers use personal vocabulary for skies is to say that they relate to the skies as persons. The word person captures a form of life, not a category. Biblical writers are not dividing the world into categories, but describing relationships. That is so strong and so powerful. And one of the things that I love that comes slightly unstated, but is there in what Mari has to say, is that, rocks and wind, for instance, have their own relationship without any reference to us as human beings. And that's the whole of creation has personhood woven in it and through it. And learning that and living in the light of that has profound possibilities. Thank you.